everything I know did not come from an official higher education because I took
I feel
no.
like you need a shirt. I feel like that's your next swag thing. Okay, go ahead.
I've said before that I'm self-taught, but really that's not true because I've been taught by a lot of mentors and coaches over the years, but never any professional, formal college education. My college undergraduate degree was in political science. That had nothing to do with business. My minor was English. That had nothing to do with business. And in law school, we took one course. I took one course on law firm practice management that taught us a little bit about what running a law firm would be like. And I read that book actually several times because I had aspired to have my own firm. But the one thing it said was you must have a six-figure savings account before you start your business. And I never had that. I never had anything remotely close to that. And so I pretty much had given up on the idea of owning my own business.
Welcome to the Oxygen Podcast. Over the next 20 minutes, dive into the world of business with tips, tricks, and success stories straight from the trenches. Our guests bring real world advice and tools that serve as their oxygen on their journey. Get ready for a breath of fresh air on this episode of the Oxygen Podcast.
Hey, Oxygen. All right. So I am super excited to talk today because this episode is going to land right smack in the middle of Women's History Week. So we are bringing to you a female entrepreneur that is, again, over $2 million in revenue or gross receipts, like we are doing in 2024. And so I get to introduce you to our first women in business entrepreneur, Brooke Boltz. Welcome to the Oxygen Podcast.
Thank you so much. I am excited to be here.
We were talking before we got started, and I think at some point I'm going to learn my lesson about recording right when we get on the podcast, but that it is so difficult to find other women to network with, especially that have reached a level of success or maybe are just comfortable talking about a level of success. And we cold reached out to each other, which I think is very sad, but also interesting. And so I just really appreciate the fact that you are willing to be authentic in the journey and the discussion that we're going to have here. It gives a lot of I'm going to say warrant to the fact that this actually had to be designated by the US government. And I didn't know this. I had to prep for our conversation today. Jimmy Carter actually made this an official week, March 2nd through the 8th, to draw attention to the fact that women's history was important.
Wow. So I learned something new today myself.
Ah,
Well,
see, that's
thank
what happens
you.
when you.
Yes, and we were just chatting, as you mentioned, that as women, we love to network with other women. We can build sort of a closer bond, especially if you're a married woman. You always want to have kind of that professional boundary when you're working with and networking with men. And so when you're working with women or networking with women, you can kind of build that closer relationship where you don't have to worry about um how much time you're spending with them, or if it's looking like you're spending too much time or getting too close or texting each other too often. You just don't have to worry about those things when you are dealing woman to woman in a friendship type situation. And we enjoy the same things. We oftentimes are in similar stages of life if we're mothers and business owners. So just networking with other women is something that I love to do. And but finding women who have reached certain levels of success is also a challenge sometimes, to find women who are going to have mutually beneficial conversations and advice to offer to each other.
Yeah, I think that that's a really interesting perspective on it. Well, so great kickoff. Tell us a little bit about you. Tell us about your business and all the things we should know before we talk a little bit further.
Sure. So I am a personal injury and insurance attorney in Florida. I have been practicing law for 15 years. I'm licensed in Florida and Texas. I have my law firm now has around 15 or so employees. We grew from nothing 6 years ago. I started my law firm in a spare bedroom of my home and have now grown to this place, and actually just this year purchased the building that I've occupied for the last 5 years. So that's a synopsis of my professional experience. Before starting my own law firm, I worked for a large insurance defense firm. I was a partner there and oversaw over a dozen attorneys at the time of my departure. So I did that for about 9 years, then switched sides to now work for the citizens, filing suits against insurance companies. And I also am a wife and mother. I have 3 children, ages 12, 13, and 4, 2 girls and a boy.
Oh my gosh. Wow. I remember those days very, very fondly. I'm happily an empty nester now. So I give you a lot of credit that the flashbacks just came like flying at me when you said 12, 13, and 4. So that's, I give you a lot of credit.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, kudos to you, because I think that bootstrapping an organization is something that there's a lot of people who don't do it, like they buy or they inherit, or but I also love this saying that you never face judgment from somebody who's further down the path than you are. And so that's one of the reasons why podcast sessions like this are so incredibly important, because you have a perspective that a lot of people don't have. And so I'm excited to hear what we're going to talk about today. All right, so what makes you different? I told you earlier, like I was trolling all your accounts and checking out some of the fun things about you, and you have a really interesting stance on how to present yourself. So tell me a little bit about what makes you different from other insurance and personal injury attorneys.
Sure. I think I'm more fun. I- As
That is 100% what you got going on, girl.
yeah. The perception of personal injury attorneys is a very serious and aggressive tone. And when I first started my business and I did research to find out what people are looking for when they hire an attorney, that's what I found. They're looking for someone who is aggressive and a fighter to represent them. And so when I first started, that was how I presented my brand as well. It was me with no smile in all black attire, standing at a desk, with a very serious, I don't mess with me look on my face. And I think that worked well for the brand, and it fits with my personality, because that is the person that I am when I'm in the courtroom. That's the person I am when I am advocating for a client. But it also is what everybody else is doing. And so it kind of just doesn't help me to stand out. So over the course of time, I got a little more comfortable being more creative in my marketing and advertising, and found out that it's actually a lot more fun to come up with creative ideas. And it's turned into one of my favorite parts of being a business owner, is coming up with new ideas that haven't been done by someone else before. And probably one of the more extreme examples is I did a music video last year. It was a parody of Meghan Trainor's song All About That Bass. We changed the lyrics to All About That Case. And so that really got a lot of attention from people who saw it. It really helped me to stand out. Of course, not everybody loved it. I got my share of negative TikTok comments on that, but it definitely helped me to stand out. And so I, over time, have become more and more comfortable with doing things that are creative. We do have limitations put on us by the Florida bar, so we can't go too crazy. But I am all about stretching those rules to the furthest extent that I can in a creative way, within the guidelines of what the bar lays out for us.
Okay, so every part of this just makes me warm and fuzzy inside, because I think that this entire concept, like I have a hard time sitting in my chair when we talk about this. Every part of this is about finding the gap and closing it, and being willing to not be like everybody else. We walk into an organization and the most detrimental thing we can hear is, well, we do it this way because it's always been done this way. And what I heard you say to me was, you looked at an industry that said, well, we've always done it this way. And you said, okay, that's great, but I'm here now. So what are we going to change about it? So that's terrifying for a lot of people. Talk to me about why you were willing to break the mold.
Sure.
Because that mold is like well entrenched, like the attorney mold, the personal injury mold, that, like you said, the bar is watching you. What makes you willing to say, great, you can do it your way, but I'm here now?
Well, and being a business owner is about constant personal development as well. You have to constantly be working on yourself and your own ability to withstand rejection. And it comes with the territory. And there's been times in my life where I sat back and didn't do something that was creative because I was afraid of the negative responses that would come with it. And so over time, though, I started to learn that there will be negative, but there will also be positive. And just that same TikTok video that I mentioned with the music video, I got responses on there that said things like, never sing again, this is cringe AF.
Yeah.
And I thought this was Kids Bop, and like really negative comments. But I also got comments that said, if I ever need a lawyer, I will be calling you. And I got more of those, frankly, that were over the top complimentary than I did the negative ones. And so I recognized that if I don't do anything, then I'm missing out on the blessing that comes with the risk. And so now when the negative comes, I understand that I'm not for everybody. My personality and my style is not for everybody, but the people who do appreciate what I'm doing are really, really fans of it. Like they really, really enjoy it, so much so that they want to work with me if the need ever arises.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a very it's an interesting perspective, because the number of people that you hope need you is very slim. And then the number of people whose feedback and will ever need you, that number coinciding, they're irrelevant. The majority of people who commented negatively on your content that will ever even be a potential client, the numbers game probably falls more in your favor, and that's hard to absorb when it's in your face at all times.
Yeah. Yeah. So those negative people, trust me, there's plenty of other lawyers for them. You can't drive 100 yards without passing 10 billboards. So, those people will find a lawyer who is more fit with what is appealing to them.
Yeah.
But for me, it's just, for me, I'm looking for the people who appeal to me. That's one of the greatest lessons I've actually learned is find your people in business. You don't have to find everybody. There's enough work out there for us all to make a living. If we focus on finding the people who relate the best to us, then we're going to do well. It doesn't have to be everybody.
Yeah. So the next thing I'm going to ask you about, I actually thought it was a little bit of a divine intervention. So you make a comment about going to study Chris Voss. And Chris Voss happens to be one of my absolute most favorite people ever. For those of you that are listening to the audio, I actually have his book right here sitting in my office. It's one of like my required readings when I put people through training. And you speak very frequently about the emotional components of your development, how you interact with people. Tell me a little bit about, is that a key component of the mental training that you put yourself through, and how you've developed into this place?
Yes. So emotional rapport building is what I call it. And it's about building a level of trust with whomever you're working with. You've probably heard before that for people to want to work with you, they need to know, like, and trust you. And
Mhm.
so to get to that place, they either have to have an experience with you through utilizing your service, but even before that, what they see of you online or what they hear of you, if they're listening to things about your reputation, or what they learn of you through a personal interaction, are all the ways that those things are built. And so the most successful way to build your business, in my experience, has been one-on-one personal connections with people. I just gave an example of last month, the number of Google phone calls that came in. I'm going to do some quick math here. Yeah. So of the calls that came in because of Google, only 5.5. So if we round up 6% actually turned into clients. So
Mm.
94% of those calls were people calling for things unrelated to what I do. And while I still appreciate those calls and I still try very much to find someone who can help them, if it's not me, that is a very low percentage of calls coming in to actually turning into clients. So what I've discovered is those that come from personal referrals are the best cases that we get. And so by building those relationships and having people know, like, and trust you, that's going to be the best way to get the best referrals.
Okay, so if I can make sure that everybody heard what you just said, Google's great, right? The statistic that you tout on your social media is that you have the most 5-star Google reviews in Avito, but that's not where the majority of your customers come from.
Correct.
The existing customers that you have that refer you out is where the majority of your additional business comes from. So especially for people who are building a business here, the statistics are great. And I think that I actually was not sure I was going to ask you this question, but we're going to go here next. The statistics are great, but like when you hear people touting certain statistics like Google reviews or like, the metrics that I hear people throw out are absolutely disgusting. I think one of the things that's incredibly important is, when was the last time somebody referred you? Especially when it's other women, that you're trying to get involved in, and hearing another person say, hey, I'm on an emotionally intelligent journey to grow my business. Those are people who are going long distances, not people who say, hey, I've got a bunch of artificial 5-star Google reviews. Not that yours are, but you can very easily artificially build that statistic. So the Chris Voss component, you are very humble about this, because I think you use it in reference to your customers, but you also seem to have a pretty firm grasp on this when it comes to your own development. Like, you understand people from a very emotional place, how you interact with them. It's a rapport building concept, but it's also your own personal journey on where you've come from and where you're going.
Yes, I've actually spent a lot of time and money in coaching on this specific area,
Yeah.
because you can be a very candid person who really cares about people, but if you aren't good at communicating it, if you aren't good at listening, then you can really those relationships can really not grow and blossom in the way that they otherwise could. A major thing that we often do in conversations at networking meetings or at lunches and things like that is we are just talking about ourselves too much. And someone may say, oh, my daughter is in 5th grade. And I would say, oh, mine's in 6th grade. And then just redirecting the conversation back to myself. And that is frankly how a lot of conversations go back and forth, is just each of us sharing about ourselves some thought that was prompted by what that other person said. And in reality, we're not really learning much about them. And people really feel heard and understood when you give them the opportunity to speak about themselves and to share about themselves. And the Never Split the Difference book is a book about negotiating in hostage situations, but that's exactly what they do. They ask them questions about themselves to try to find out what is that motivating factor that led this person to now be holding people hostage at gunpoint. What is that deep rooted um, foundational principle that has led them to this place? And we could do the same thing in business. We just want to find out what makes them tick, what's their mission, vision, and purpose in life. But if you sat down and just said to them, hey, what's your purpose in life, they might be a little taken aback or intimidated, like, is this a counseling session? So you just ask it with very simple questions. Tell me about yourself, and then you just ask other questions that are open-ended and very simple, and not in a counselor way, but in a genuine way of just trying to learn more about them. And it's really just having the right heart of wanting to truly get to know this person and expressing that interest through allowing them to speak. And then in turn, once you do that, I can promise you, if you say to them, would it be all right now if I tell you a little bit about myself and my business? 100% of the time, they will say, yes, absolutely. Please tell me about yourself.
Yeah, I mean that is the rapport, right? When Chris Voss talks about the black swan, we talk a little bit more about the phoenix, right? Like, so we dig through the ashes and find the phoenix and let it rise back up. The black swan thing. I
I
always
call it
tell
the
people,
pearl. We all have our own
yeah,
terminology.
it's a little less I always tell people, if I'm going to teach you to negotiate like a hostage negotiator, you might get a little weirded out. So I have a huge caveat when I tell you you don't want less than a whole person back, and people get all weirded out. I'm like, okay, fine, we'll call it Phoenix. um but yeah, I think that it's like sitting down and talking to your girlfriends. When you go out for coffee with your girlfriends, why are you more comfortable than going and sitting at a negotiation table? Well, because you are relaxed and you're inquisitive and so how do we find those two common places? And you just described it so eloquently, because then you're willing to kind of repay the favor of being inquisitive back about somebody else. And if we had more of that, maybe we'd be in a different place in society, maybe.
Well, one of the most beneficial things I ever learned, and this was before I ever started my law firm, I worked at a big law firm with hundreds of lawyers in it. And there was one particular partner in the firm who was responsible for bringing in like 90+% of the work. He was known to be the rainmaker of the firm. And he told me one time that people hire you not because you're the best lawyer, but because they're your friend and they want to work with their friends. And even though at that point in my career, I wasn't really in a business building position, so to speak, I never forgot that. And I recognized how true it was when I started my own business years later, that it goes both ways. The people I want to work with are my friends, and the people that want to work with me are my friends. So it's really just about making more friends is
Yeah.
really what it's about.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so one of the things that we hear frequently is when you go to school to be an accountant, be a lawyer, be an insurance, get your insurance certificate, things like that, you miss the whole business school aspect, right? They didn't take you to school to learn a P&L and macro and microeconomics and all of those components. So you're in a very unique spot. You've got quite a bit of education under your belt, but the business school component, unless you took a minor, you knew that one day that firm, owning your own firm, was in your future. What do you think that you learned in the trenches that is really the valuable component that didn't come out of an official higher education?
So everything I know did not come from an official higher education, because I took
I feel
no.
like you need a shirt. I feel like that's your next swag thing. Okay, go ahead.
I've said before that I'm self-taught, but really that's not true, because I've been taught by a lot of mentors and coaches over the years, but never any professional, formal college education. My college undergraduate degree was in political science. That had nothing to do with business. My minor was English. That had nothing to do with business. And in law school, we took one course. I took one course on law firm practice management that taught us a little bit about what running a law firm would be like. And I read that book actually several times because I had aspired to have my own firm. But the one thing it said was you must have a six-figure savings account before you start your business. And I never had that. I never had anything remotely close to that. And so I pretty much had given up on the idea of owning my own business. I did start my own business. I still didn't have it, but I sometimes having that motivation of needing to of sink or swim is where we really reach our biggest potential. So for me, that was a huge learning tool and lesson that you don't have to have six figures in the account. Now, there is wisdom there. If you can have that, then you want to have that. But it's if you have some other things in place that can pave the way for you to get to that point, then you can still start a business. You can even start it part-time while you work a full-time job until you can get to the place that you can transition to full-time. So there's so many lessons I've learned along the way. When I started, I didn't know anything. I knew nothing. No one in my family was a business owner. My dad was a pastor of a church. My mom is a legal assistant. The closest thing to a business owner in my family was my grandfather who owned a drywall business. But that's not a law firm. So, and we didn't really live in close proximity. He never really taught me a whole lot about what it was like to run the drywall business. So I just didn't have any family mentor or guide to show me what to do. So it was just a lot of trial and error for me. I'll say one piece of advice. I called my friend. I had a friend from law school who had a very successful firm. And I said, tell me what to do. Like, what if you had no money and you were me, what would you do? What's the one thing I should do? She told me to join the Rotary Club. So I went out the next day and joined the Rotary Club. And from there, I ended up being introduced to BNI, Business Network International, which turned out to be, that is now what I recommend to people. If they say, I can only do one thing and one thing only, joining a BNI for me has been the best return on investment. And so that's the number one thing that I recommend to people if they're starting out and looking to grow.
Yeah. Yeah. The networking component gets really overlooked, whether it's Rotary or BNI or some kind of established networking. The it's lonely at the top component is unnecessary in the year 2024. Get in a group, but get in a good group.
Yes.
That's important.
Yeah. And they're not all the same. There are some Rotary clubs that are great. And then there are some BNI chapters that are not so great. So you might have to visit a few and find one that is the best fit for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Okay. So what is the one thing that you think is a lean in moment for women in business? That moment that you think most women shy away and they shouldn't. Like, I don't like to shit on people, but I even know that there are moments where I would lean away in hesitancy, and they're really the moments I should lean in. And on the flip side, when their male counterparts should be the most supportive, even when they believe it's unnecessary. Where do you think that moment is?
So I think that a lot of women friends that I have sort of an apprehension of risk taking. Taking risks is just not in their DNA. And being a business owner is about taking risks and not knowing how much you're going to make from month to month and things like that. So I think that first is assessing your personality. I used to tell everybody to be a business owner. And then I realized, well, if we're all business owners, then there's not going to be any employees, and we need to have employees too. And then I recognize there's this like DISC personality profile that kind of can tell you if you're well suited for business ownership or not. And so now I tell people, do the DISC personality profile. Even if you don't do the profile, you probably can look at the parameters of it and figure out which one you are just by knowing yourself. And if you have one of those personalities that is like a D personality, for example, then your personality is well suited for business ownership. And you're going to be usually uh, more willing to take risks than some of the other personalities might be, and really start exploring whether business ownership is for you. I personally think, for me, at least, it was the best thing that I've ever done, and I wish I would have started sooner. I'm so thankful to be where I am, and financially speaking, I could have worked 30 years at that major law firm and wouldn't be where I am today. I could
Yeah.
have worked there the rest of my career and would never be where I am today. So it's just the reward is great, but the risk is also great. And I know also, as speaking as a mother, when I started my business, I had two children who were about, let's see, 6 - 13 is 7. They were 6 and 7. And as a business owner, I gave birth to my son 4 years ago. And that is no small feat. And I think a lot of women
Yeah.
think, well, I don't want my children to suffer because I am so committed to my business, or my businesses require me to work so many hours. But I'll tell you, in comparison, in my own life, my work-life balance now is better than it ever was before I became a business owner, because I have the control now to be able to hire other people who I can delegate to.
Yeah.
And so it really is just a process, and it's about assessing your own risk tolerance, your own personality. But if you have those things, I would encourage you to take the leap of faith,
Yeah.
because it definitely has a huge reward on the other side of it if you also get a great coach and mentor along the way.
Yeah, I think you hit it. You have to have a support system around you to be able to grow. You've done a lot of things in a very short period of time, which is a very amazing. I'm very impressed. What do you want your legacy to be in your business?
For me, my I'm just trying to figure out how to best word this, but to me, I want my legacy to be that I put my clients' needs above my own. Obviously,
Mhm.
my business as an attorney, I make money. I mean, any business,
Yeah.
you make money, but I make money by making money for other people. I recover money for them, and then I in turn get paid as well. But I really want people and my clients to perceive me as someone who is fighting for their best interest, not for my own. And so I really hope, and I really try to always look at every case from that perspective. And I hope that my clients feel that and believe that as well, because that truly is what's most important to me. And it also is hand in hand with growing your business, because if you have satisfied customers, happy customers who feel well cared for and well um, valued, then they will recommend your service to other people.
Yeah. It's very interesting to me because you seem to not be in a place where you have noticed that there's a lot of people with their eyes on you that, are really wanting to follow in your footsteps and really are benefiting from the ceilings that you're breaking for other younger attorneys coming behind you and younger female entrepreneurs. So I think that you have a way bigger impact than you realize. And I think that there's some really amazing things coming behind you because I can see it from where I'm at. You're really, disrupting in a really great way. And I think you've got a way bigger footprint than you realize, or than you're giving yourself credit for. That's really amazing. So Okay, where do people follow you for all of this awesome parodies? And there's some football pictures, by the way. She has got some fun things about when she played football when she was younger. So where do all these wonderful pictures exist, and where do people find you?
Sure. So my law firm website is www.boltzlegal. That's B as in boy, OLTZ legal.com. And I'm on social media at Boltz Legal on all the major social media platforms. I also have a podcast called Miss Biz. That's MSBIZ. And so you can check out the podcast website at missbiz.com or on social media. Our handle is at Miss Biz Podcast.
I love that. All right. So, last question. I always ask all of my business owners and entrepreneurs, what do you need next? As business owners, sometimes we have a hard time knowing and naming what the one thing is that we need next. So, if I ask you, what do you think you need next?
Oh, that's a tough one. My focus really has been on building my personal injury department. For the last several years, I've been focused a lot on my homeowners insurance cases, but we've had some changes in the law in Florida that's made that practice area a lot harder to earn money at and make a living at. And so for that reason, I've been kind of transitioning to building personal injury. And it's been it's just a little disheartening to have built something and to be so proud of your accomplishments and then have the rug kind of pulled out from underneath you and have to kind of reshift and refocus and start all over again in some ways. But it's also been a learning lesson because it happens to everyone. In fact, I now have a much greater empathy for those people who were shut down by COVID because it was something outside of their control that really hurt their business. And so now it's kind of been a learning lesson for me in being diversified in a few different practice areas so that if anything happens to one of them, that you have multiple streams of revenue coming in. So for me right now, building that department has really been my focus. So marketing, advertising, networking are where my mind is spending a lot of its focus right now.
Yeah, I love that. All right. Well, so everybody heard it. It's not a straight arrow, not going all the way up. It's lots and lots of peaks and valleys. All right. Well, Brooke, thank you so much. Happy Women in Business Month to you and all of your staff. There's lots of women floating around there, I understand. And I just really appreciate your time today. This was great. All
Thank
right,
you.
everybody. We tell everybody to take just a little bit of time to breathe life in, and we will see you next time.